Hey YouTube, this is a recording of a career coaching panel that I did with Albert's List and with Joe Naid, who's a phenomenal career coach that really knows his stuff. He's the founder of nodegree.com, and if you want to work with me or him, I'll have links down in the description below for his website and my website where you can contact us. In this webinar, we talked about a lot of topics, from getting your resume through the ATS to networking to getting referrals. I know it's a really long recording, so I'm going to have timestamps down below, and if you see something or have any follow-up questions, please put them down in the comments and I'll do my best to answer all of your questions as soon as possible. Alright, well, subscribe for more career tips and enjoy.
Today we have a panel led by Elisa Huang, featuring Corey Hiramoto and Jonaid Iqbal here to help if you're looking to get that leg up in your job search. This event is moderated by Albert's List moderator and sales executive Lisa Huang. She's very active in our community. You may have seen her in the comments. And we hope to help you get closer to the job search outcomes that you want as the year progresses and comes to an end, and as we get into 2021.
So with that, I'm going to first let our speakers just briefly introduce themselves. So first, I'm going to start with Corey. He is a Fortune 100 recruiter and also owns his own career coaching business, CareerShakers, which helps a lot of corporate professionals plan out their careers and find their next job. So Corey, do you have anything more to add that you'd like to share with the group?
Nope, just very honored to be here. A lot of you may know me from the mock interview sessions that I do with Albert's List on Mondays, or you've seen my YouTube channel and all those other types of videos, but very excited to be here and help answer the community questions.
Awesome, thank you so much. Our second speaker is Jonaid Iqbal. He is a career consultant based out of New York City. So he's Eastern Standard Time, a little bit later out there. Excited to have him on. He is the founder of No Degree, which is a career resource website that connects people with suitable career paths, and the sort of niche focus is for folks without a formal degree. So it's helpful for job seekers from all walks of life. And kick it over to you, Junaid. Anything more to add?
No, I mean, you hit it well. You know, I focus on people without degrees, but you'd be surprised at the amount of jobs that people can get without degrees, right? A lot of times experience is what it really comes down to, and you have to be able to sell your experience. So I'd really love to talk about like the different ways that you can actually do that during the pandemic.
Okay, so I'm just going to go right into it and kick it off. This is something that I think a lot of our displaced professionals right now are dealing with, in a sense that everybody applies for jobs, and some might even know what target market they are looking into, but they're not getting any, hits back, like screening, invites, interviews. And so I want to first start off this question with Corey. What are 1 to 2 tips you recommend to really stand out from the crowd and get the attention of recruiters and secure that first interview?
So I think this actually comes down to 2 parts. The first part is, are you applying for the right role based on your experience and qualifications and skill sets? I have seen some cases, not all the time, but some cases where you may apply for a role based on your existing job title at your current company, and in the market it actually is a slightly different role than what your company has titled it. And so sometimes you may be qualified for roles but applying for the wrong ones. And another thing that I've also seen is, based on how you structure and write your resume, it's not always compelling enough to either pass the ATS system or to pass the actual recruiter or hiring manager as they're going through different resumes. A few things that I think are top of mind for me is, very, very often I see people write resumes as a list of their job description, basically outlining their responsibilities. So to keep things simple, right, if you were, let's say, a janitor, on a resume, I've seen a lot of people be like, I clean bathrooms, I can vacuum, I can mop, I know how to disinfect certain surfaces, etc. That's just a description of what you do. But as a hiring manager, if I wanted to hire like the best janitor, I would want to know what makes you different than everybody else. What are certain unique skills that you have or accomplishments as a janitor that would make you stand out? When I read the resume, I'd be like, oh, I want to interview Corey for this type of position. So I would just start there. Number one thing about what you're applying to, and is it really the right role for you? You should match, I would say, 100% of the qualifications that are listed. A lot of the clients I work with say, oh, I read it and I can do at least half of the stuff. And then the other stuff I'll just learn on the job because everybody told me it's really easy. When you're applying online without a referral, I do think you should match 100% of the job description and make sure that your keywords match so you can pass the ATS. And then once you're sure that you're applying for the right types of roles, I would then take a look at your resume and figure out what key gaps or skills may be missing or not showing up.
Yeah. I mean,
Go ahead.
yeah, great answer, Corey. And I really want to, I just want to expand on that. Like when it comes to the ATS, what I found in my experience is formatting is very important. I've seen a lot of people use like fancy formatting, and you kind of have to think about it as a dumb system that's looking for certain things, and it's looking for keywords. Because if you're getting 500 resumes, there are very few people who are going to actually look at 500 resumes. If they do, they're only going to look at it briefly, right? Different ATS systems have different standards, but try to cater it to the worst ATS system. So don't have like profile photos, don't have that. That's what your LinkedIn profile is for. And don't really have like fancy characters, all these things. Like how I check someone's ATS compatibility, I copy and paste the resume into Notepad. And then if it pastes into Notepad, you'll see, do all the symbols appear? I've had people use different types of bullet points that don't appear, because if it errors out over there, you don't know how it may error out on the ATS. I've also seen certain formats, because when they're looking for keywords, let's say they're looking for a financial analyst, certain formats, when you use these fancy online generators, they add double spacing between words. So now if the ATS is looking for the word financial analyst, it won't find it because it's going to find financial space analyst. And these things have impact. So I've seen people who've changed up their formatting, and now they've increased their interviews. Now, so there are two things. You have to satisfy the ATS to get passed, and then you have to satisfy the hiring manager. If you copied and pasted the job description, you could probably get past the ATS, but when the hiring manager reads it, they're going to be like, this is not a resume. So you have to find the right balance. And adding on to Corey's thing is, you don't want to just say, I clean bathrooms. You want to say, hey, I clean, I don't know, 500 plus bathrooms for a school of 3,000 plus people. Now people have an idea. Like a mistake a lot of people make is they say, I work for a large school. What is large? Large school in NYC may be a tremendously huge school upstate, right? It varies. So kind of be descriptive. And, people say I handle a lot of calls, and I'll be like, how many calls do you handle? We'll be like, oh, I do 50 a day. So how many is that a week? 250 a week. That's like 1,000 plus phone calls a month. Now you tell someone, hey, you don't only handle calls, you handle 1,000 plus phone calls every month. So you kind of want to do that. And again, you kind of want to find the right balance of being detailed, but don't be too detailed. That's what the interview is for. You want to be the right amount of detail so they have an idea, so that they're like, I want to call this person, but not too much detail where you're taking up too much space on the resume. Because remember, most people are not going to read every single bullet point on the resume. I've gone to interviews, and I'm pretty sure all of you have been in interviews where it's clear that they have not read your resume. So you just want to make sure that you keep it straight to the point, give enough detail, and that you have the keywords, that read job descriptions and kind of see what's common language when you start customizing your resume.
Well, and I just want to add on to that too. When he was talking about those templates and online generators, I did a review of like, if you just go to Google and you type in like best resume format or best resume template, and all those free sites, they all use formats that are not necessarily ATS compatible.
Yeah.
A lot of them have columns on the left-hand side, where they'll like call out like your skills, and then they'll make you use like these star rankings. By the way, never self-rate yourself with those rankings. Recruiters and hiring managers hate those, but also those will never show up in the ATS because it's in a separate column. And then also with like those weird characters and stars, it just doesn't translate.
Yeah, and then the other thing to add to the stars, like, what is a 4 out of 4, 5 out of star? What does that mean? Like, I'm 4 out of 5 in Adobe Photoshop. What does that mean? Because now, look, people either undersell themselves or oversell themselves. And look, I'm pretty good in Excel. I meet a lot of people, entry-level people, who say, I'm good at Excel. I could tell in 10 seconds, by the way, how they use their keyboard, whether or not they're good in Excel. So make sure you know how to accurately rate yourself, and don't put like, you could say intermediate, medium, advanced, but don't go into 4 out of 5 stars, because, especially 10 stars. What is a 7? What is a 9? It really has no meaning. You got to think about it. The person does not know you. They don't know your ranking system. They know what 50 phone calls means. They know what certain functions means. They know languages, what you've built. They can do that. But yeah, don't go into these ranking systems with these weird columns. It just doesn't mean much.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. So I heard a lot of good ones there. There's, initially we focused a lot on the ATS system and making sure that the format of the resume, it's a fit, like compatibility, I guess, if you will, and try to just make it so that the format is easily usable and trackable, like if there's certain keywords that you want to use. Secondly is also just sort of this focus on quantitative achievements. So instead of like, I don't know, support accounts and manage relationships, you would say something like manage $2 million worth of business and achieved 100% client retention, or something actionable, if you will. And then the last one I heard is this area around, well, I'll get into a little bit more on that. If you are not coming in with a referral, really making sure that the job you're applying for, you're 100% fit, which I think right now, because we have a lot of job seekers out in the market, there's this tendency to say, well, if I can do most of these tasks, then I'll probably get, through the initial screening, which without a referral, that's going to be a lot harder. This was going to be, actually, before I go into my follow-up question, there's a question in the chat room that says, is it best to submit your resume as a PDF or Word doc for ATS, or does it matter? Any thoughts there?
I know some people say PDF. I personally do Word because that's sort of what I do, and I've never had issue, but I don't think it's so much that it's going to be like one is 5 times better. But I personally just recommend Word just because I know from a programming standpoint, it's easier to parse Word documents than sometimes PDFs and stuff. I don't know, Corey, what do you have to say about that?
I usually recommend everybody to do PDF, which is funny because it's the kind of opposite. Just
Yeah.
because PDF is basically a screenshot of your
Yeah.
file at that point in time. So when you upload it to certain ATS systems and cloud databases, it doesn't get altered.
Yeah.
Because the one thing you don't want to do, and I've seen this at my company, is sometimes if you send me a .doc file and then I open it up in my ATS system, like
Yeah.
your lines get all blurred and like jumbled together, and then I can't tell, like, well, did you purposely do that on your resume, or is this just because like my ATS is displaying it incorrectly? And so I just always just advise just on the safer side, but I don't think it's make or break. I wouldn't do Pages. I wouldn't do like Google Doc formats. I wouldn't do that LinkedIn thing where you can like print your resume. I wouldn't do that either. But
Also,
Word, PDF, fine.
Yeah. Also, to be fair, I use a very simple format, so even in the ATS. But yeah, if you're doing anything fancy, you got to. But email-wise, email PDF. Whenever you're emailing someone, like through a referral or passing along, that's 100% PDF.
Okay. Awesome. Stephanie Fan, I hope that answers your question. If it didn't, feel free to message a follow-up. So we're going to actually do a little bit of a transition. So just talking about applying for jobs, I know a lot of people in the group chat talks a lot about applying for many jobs and not hearing back. And so the notion is that if you know someone, there's an introduction or a referral, then there's more of a possibility or probability of getting a screening. But if you don't know anyone in the company, how do you go about obtaining that referral? Okay, let's start with Janai. You want to share some thoughts on how a candidate go about sort of, prospecting for one, et cetera?
Yeah, honestly, I would say get conversations, start building your LinkedIn network. I mean, I've been on LinkedIn for like a year and a half, and I don't use it specifically for job seeking. I just kind of use it just to connect. Like, I'm on this thing because of Lisa, right? That's how we met. And now I'm going to meet Corey, and then we'll follow up and I'll support his content. And, I'm in a position where it's like, I know people that work at Facebook, Google, Twitter, Amazon, and I can get introductions at these companies. Just realize that it's a long game, that it's not like, hey, next week I want to work at Amazon, I got to do this, because this is what happens to people who work at those companies. Everybody connects with them for the sole reason of getting a referral, and it kind of sucks when everybody's contacting you for the sole reason of getting a referral. But there are very few people who actually stick around and build relationships, right? That the person I know from Facebook, I went to high school with. The person I know from Amazon, I've been supporting their content and they got a job at Amazon. The person I know from Twitter just got a job at Twitter, and he worked at Salesforce, and he was on my podcast. So it's these things that sort of develop naturally and organically. Now, the other thing is sometimes it takes time. You want to kind of reach out to the hiring manager. I know specifically someone, they were applying for a job and they said it required a degree. So they reach out to the hiring manager and they're like, is this a hard requirement? They're like, no, if you have qualified, feel free to apply. So get a conversation going. don't just say, hey, can you recommend me? Show something like, if let's say you don't meet all the requirements, you meet 90% of the requirements, there's a reason to start a conversation saying, hey, I saw you required this. I have X years of experience in this, but I'm sort of lacking in this. Is this a hard requirement, or, can I get in? So start a conversation. I recommend one thing is you follow the companies that you're applying to, because on LinkedIn recruiting side, they have a list of people who are engaged with the company. And you'd be surprised that, oh, HubSpot is hosting a webinar with their CEO or with their chief of marketing. Now think about it. You have an excuse to connect with the chief of marketing. Now I'll tell you, on those things, maybe 10 to 20 people show up. Now you can actually message someone saying, hey, I saw that you were a speaker on this and you gave these 2 great tips. Look at the stuff. There are some people who are publishing content, and I'm telling you, people don't publish content for 4 likes, right? They want people to sort of reach out, and they don't mind that. Now, not everybody will be receptive, but you don't need everybody to be receptive. And you'd be surprised at how many intros you can get. The other thing is, if you're applying for a role or a company, ask for an intro call. Don't ask for a referral, because the thing is, a referral, when someone talks to me right away and they ask for a referral, it puts me in a bad spot, because I feel bad because I know how it is as a job seeker, but I also don't know them. So it puts me in a binary of saying yes or no. And no, I feel like a bad guy. Yes, I've given referrals to people in the past who I found out weren't the greatest people. And then I kind of feel like, oh, crap. So ask them for advice. Get a conversation with them, because now once you have a conversation with them, I have no issue giving a referral to someone who I've talked to and kind of have an idea with, and I kind of can feel them out. So ask for advice. And when you ask for advice, you'd be surprised and kind of get follow-up. And at the end of a call, kind of just say, hey, thank you for your call. Do you have anybody else I should talk to?
That's
If they don't
key.
give you a referral, keep going. And you'd be surprised at where it leads you and who you end up talking to. So that's the advice I had. Take your time, build those relationships. And the other thing is, in part of networking, there's probably someone in your network right now that can help you get to further than where you are, but they just don't know you're looking. I've seen so many times where it's like, I see people switch jobs and I'm like, oh, I didn't know you were looking. Or, hey, I didn't know you got this new job, just because we get so tied up in like applying online, applying to 100 jobs. Spend time, call like 3 to 4, 5 people in your network, 10 to 15 minutes, right? You don't have to call them every week, right? But I have people who I rotate every 6 months. They're just my friends. And then I'll know, oh, he went from Citibank to this thing, right? Now I know, hey, do you have any contacts? So start with that. Start nurturing your own network that already exists and tell them about your journey. They need to know, because a lot of times, if you think about it, the companies that are worth the most are data companies and information companies, right? Because information is valuable, and your network has a lot of information and you have a lot of information. So you need to exchange that information.
I really like his point also about asking for additional names at the end of your call as opposed to asking for a referral. I think that is super, super key. It's like a nice little change and nuance, but it actually really does make a huge difference. I got my first job out of college in management consulting by basically doing that the entire time. And I went to a university where the McKinseys and the Bains and the Accentures of the world never recruited from. But at some point, I had known so many people in the company in that particular like department in my office that everybody was like, hey, have you talked to this guy named Corey? He went to Santa Clara University. Like, we never hire from there, but he seems really smart. And then after like 20 or 30 people, and that's how many people I had to talk to, I spent a lot of money on coffees. But after a certain point, someone at the partner level reached out to me and was like, hey, so-and-so, a director, senior director, told me that he met you for coffee, and I wanted to see if you're interested in applying for this role that we have in the San Jose office. So that's how I ended up getting my first role. And I do think that there is some huge power to that. I agree with everything that's been said so far. I know that this was another question that Lisa had written up for us, but in terms of the LinkedIn message, when you are trying to connect with folks, I would say just make it as easy as possible for the other person. And also don't just like copy and paste some generic template. As a recruiter, I get like ads all the time from people. I instantly, unfortunately, delete them. And if you say anything like too generic or not creative, I also delete them. Like, hey, I'm a student at blank. I see you work at blank. Can we connect sometime? Or, hey, I'm a financial analyst. I see that you're a recruiter at blank company. I also want to work there. Can we connect? No. So what I would say is make it as easy as possible for the other person. So propose like a time and like give me a reason to want to talk to you. And then also another big thing for networking is never reschedule. Like never cancel, never reschedule. I know that things happen with life and with work, but I would plan in advance of that. Like maybe you schedule a time on like a late Friday or Saturday or Sunday, or like take vacation and then like do all your networking calls in like one day. Because if you ever reschedule with somebody, even if it's for a really good reason, that other person doesn't really feel good. And they're doing you a favor by making time to talk to you, even if it's not for a referral. Like if I don't know you and you ask to speak with me and then you reschedule on me, odds are I'm probably not going to like reschedule and talk to you a second time.
Yeah. Also, one specific thing I forgot to mention is look for people who either worked at previous companies that you worked at or went to the same school. I know common things that people would do is you went to the same school, look for people who majored in the same thing, and kind of look at, like, if you want to work at an XYZ company, look for students who work at that company. LinkedIn has a filter, so filter people who work at that current company, and then filter people who went to the school and ask them, how'd you get into this company from this school? What advice would you have? And they may be like, look, I got in through XYZ, or they have a career fair, or they have this office, or a professor gave me a recommendation. That's like, try to find some commonality. And as Corey said, that a personalized message that's not personalized isn't personalized. Like, I get plenty of those where it's like, hey, I loved your last post, I'd love to connect. Hey, like, it's so generic. Like, I see those hundreds of times, right, a month, and it's like, it's even, I look, you only have, it's not like you have to do so much more than the other people. You just have to do more than what most people do, and you'd be surprised it's not a lot. Like, I can ask Corey, how many people mention CareerShakers when they're connecting with you? Do
Zero
many
people.
exactly. So if you want to connect with Corey, look at his thing, show that you spent a few minutes looking at his profile. There are many people who don't even read my profile. Like, it's clear, like, I tell people I don't do international resumes, and it's clear. They're like, hey, can you help me with my resume? And it's like, did you read my profile? And then I think about, and then I ask, and I tell them, I was like, why would someone help you if you don't take the 2 to 3 minutes to read someone's profile? Like, they wrote it for a reason, right? So just do a little more, read about them, kind of do a little research, right? They crafted their profile for a reason, and it'll set you apart.
Yeah. Oh, and then I guess in terms of like who you should be connecting with, I get asked that one all the time. I would say start close and then work your way out after that. Everyone's first instinct is to go immediately to LinkedIn and just like add random people, or like, oh, you went to the same school as me and you work at Amazon, like
Yeah,
please talk to me. Instead, I always say talk with your closest circle. And
yeah,
ideally, you'd want to talk to people who think very highly of you from like a work perspective. So think about like former colleagues, former coworkers, former managers, former directors, bosses, etc. Because when you ask them, hey, can you introduce me to so and so, that like connection or that referral means so much more than if it's like a family or a friend, right? Like, hey, this is my son Corey, like he's super smart, can you talk to him about how you got a job at Apple?
yeah,
Like I'm already like, okay, well of course you're going to say he's smart, he's your son.
yeah,
Like, okay, but I mean I'll still talk to you. Or if it's like, hey, I used to manage Corey, he was like the best person on my team and now he's looking for a job at your company, will you mind talking to him? That is so different, right? Than a random message or like you being someone's cousin or whatever. So start really close, especially with folks who can talk about you from work or from school. Like maybe there's a professor or there was someone in like your group project and you did all the work and like they know it and they always called you smart or whatever. Like I would start there.
yeah. I mean, that's such great advice, because when you start close, like, for example, I helped my friend with his LinkedIn profile, and he had one connection, right? So typically those type of connections don't get, when they send out requests, they get denied because it looks fake, right? So all I said was just say, hey, I'm Janai's friend, he told me to connect with you, and boom, he got his 30 connections that way. So that's the power of starting close, that they'd be like, oh, I like him, he only sends me good connections. So really utilize that, and then slowly grow. It takes time, but once you do get it to a certain level, it's very powerful.
Awesome. So many good takeaways there. So just a quick recap for everyone. In terms of if you're applying for a job and you don't have a referral or a direct connection to someone that already works there, don't wait until you're looking for a job. Start today to build your network. You just never know. Like you said, your first 3 connections, you talk to them, they may know someone that works at the company you want to work at. So the goal is just, it's a muscle. You have to flex it, continue to network and share if you are looking for a job, your first 3 connections, and it'll be sort of a ripple effect. The second thing that I think Corey mentioned that's a good call out is be very specific with your ask, and obviously you want to make it customized to where you read their profile and you're giving it a little bit of thought, but make it easy for them to want to respond to you. So propose a time, which is really important. I get a lot of requests where people just say, hey, I'd love to like connect and learn more about you. But as to like what they want to know or how specifically I can help them, it's not very clear. So just make sure that if you're asking for their time, propose a certain date, give a reason for them to speak to you as well, maybe hit on some specific points. That'll help them. It'll make it easier for them to say yes, which is ultimately what you want because you're the one that's doing the ask. Okay,
and just real quick, if you guys want a template, a networking template, and this is one I give all my clients too, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Just go to Google and type in Ramit Sethi networking script. And then there's literally an email you can copy and paste and just like alter it depending on who you want to talk to. But it has all those elements in it. Like you're proposing a time, you're talking about something related to their profile or their experience or something that they said or a book that they wrote, et cetera, et cetera. So I would just go there and literally just copy and paste it.
Yeah, and to add on to Lisa's, people help those who help themselves. So when you're in your ask, if I see that someone has clearly done their efforts, like for example, I have a podcast on how to prepare for an interview. So if someone asks me, hey, I listened to your podcast episode, but I need help on one specific thing. Do you have time? I'll take time because I've seen they invested time into themselves. I meet so many people who it's clear like they didn't even Google how to write a resume, right? Like it's clear that they did no effort. It's like you ask someone, what car should I buy? That's a terrible question to ask because I don't know anything about you. I don't know your budget. I don't know. Whereas if you said, hey, I'm looking for like a enterprise sales position at a tech company. Here's my experience. What advice would you have for my resume? I can help you. But when you're very generic, it's just a lot of work that I have to put in. And it's just too much work, especially and a lot of people are doing that on LinkedIn where they're asking, hey, can you help me with my resume? And it's just too much. So just be specific in your ask. When you ask good questions, you'll get good answers. That's really what I say.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, and then a lot of people are asking for the template, so I'm actually going to post it. But first, just going into sort of the next bucket, which we talked a lot about LinkedIn, and it's really funny because I always assume that everybody's on it and uses it daily, kind of like how Facebook or Instagram or TikTok would be. But I'm finding out because through work recently too, which I work for, a pretty conservative company, that most people don't use LinkedIn until they want to leave their current job or they need a new job. And in my head, I'm almost thinking that's probably too late because it's a ramp up time to build up your network. And so if you're just looking now, the better time is just consistently to do it regularly. So I want to ask our two speakers, for people that are just starting out or are not active on LinkedIn, what are a couple of things you encourage folks to do to sort of, kind of wade in the pool, get more into using it? Just baby steps, essentially. For people that have not used LinkedIn, just starting out, or are on it, but their profile or everything is not up to date.
I'll kind of say that start liking and commenting on stuff. A lot of people say post every day, but as a candidate, posting, that's not easy for everyone, right? Putting themselves out there and stuff, but support other people's content. I'll tell you, like there was in the beginning of LinkedIn, I barely ever posted. All I did was comment on people's posts and put thoughtful comments. Don't put thanks, cool, amazing. Like a robot can do that, right? You can hire someone to just copy and paste things. You want to post thoughtful comments that shows that you read it. And I would say if you're like, I learned a lot about resumes purely from browsing the feed. I took little tips here and there from different people and I connected with people. And that's where I learned how to write resumes that I've been able to land people at great companies with. So browse the feed. So if you want in marketing, follow great people in marketing, comment on their stuff, ask questions, and you'll be surprised that you'll see that LinkedIn is actually a small world. Like a lot of the marketers are connected with each other on marketing. A lot of the top salespeople are connected to other top salespeople. So start through that. Start commenting, commenting on the companies. Like you look at these, it's like the top companies, the Googles, the Amazon, they get a lot of engagement because they're what everybody wants to get. But you go to a second tier company, you'd be surprised that how much they may only get like 10, 20 likes. Be one of those 10, 20 likes. support that. You'd be surprised at who reaches out. Now, if someone says that open to new sales opportunities and it's a sales company, the recruiter may reach out to you, and that puts you in a much better position. So just start small, like and comment. And I would say one thing you should do is you should unfollow certain people on your feed, because you'll see certain people like sort of generic stuff and they'll clog up your feed. I would say follow people who are liking and commenting on things that are actually useful. You can learn so much. Honestly, for free, you spend a good amount of time on LinkedIn, you'll learn so much about sales, marketing, content marketing, just different areas. And you'd be surprised at just what it can lead to.
I would say to get started also, like just fill out your profile. You don't need to do everything. The basics are a professional photo. It honestly, guys,
Yeah.
professional. Like just get your iPhone, put it on portrait mode, dress up from the top up, maybe do a little bit of makeup to fix your hair if you're a guy. Take a professional photo. Don't leave it blank. And then I would, at the bare minimum, do like your job titles and like where you worked. I would only go back as far as maybe like 10 years
Yeah.
at the most, and then just put like where you went to school. You don't even have to put like what degree you got or whatever, but just put like, University of Chicago, bachelor's, and then wherever you went to get your master's or whatever. I would just say start there. That's really all you need to kind of get your LinkedIn set up, and then you can start to comment on things. Because if you comment on something and then someone wants to like see who you are, and they click it and it's blank, like no picture of you, you have like one job title without any years of like when you worked there, they'd be like, oh, this person is probably a bot, or this person doesn't even check their LinkedIn. So I would start there. And then this is not quite what Elisa was asking, but I actually also say like you don't need a LinkedIn to network. In fact, all of my strongest connections, we don't even talk on LinkedIn. I just use it either to like first meet them, or like get away to like get their email or get their phone number so I can text them or whatever. When I'm networking for stuff, or like if I ever do need something, like I use my phone. I don't even use LinkedIn. So it's just like a nice place to start, but it's not the key to success. I think the key to success is like getting somebody's phone number so you can call them, ask them questions, grab food, grab coffee, whatever. So I would just caution folks on leveraging too much on LinkedIn. It's not about the number of connections that you have;
Yeah.
it's the quality of connections that you have.
Yeah, because the thing is, you have 10, 20 good connections. That's really all you need, right? It's not like you need a lot. And I spend a lot of time on there, so I have a lot of quality connections. But even if I reduce it down to 10, I could have strong groups of 10 that are like they're there for me. Because remember, 10 good people, but they know 10 other good people. So that 10, right, is probably like a good amount of 50 to 80 people, because they'll know people who know each other. And that's all you really need.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, no, that was super helpful. So some takeaways from that is, first, make sure that your LinkedIn profile is up to date. And it's funny because a lot of people don't like to put their profile picture up, but it sounds like from a recruiting standpoint, it is really important to put a face to the name. And so like not a lot of people put their picture on their resume. So usually LinkedIn is the next best thing. So picture is very important. Make sure your job title, your summary, and then I guess like job titles and descriptions from the last 10 years is key. And I get asked this a lot, is there weight put on endorsements for certain skills and recommendations? Does that factor into recruiting at all? I just want to kind of debunk that myth because I hear that all the time.
Well, I'll kind of say if someone's looking at your profile, it doesn't matter, but I will say that it impacts the search results, because my search results, like I get between 2K to 11K search results in a week. And I've like tracked and it's correlated with the amount of endorsements and the amount. Now, look, not every search result is valuable, but it leads to more search results. But as Corey was saying, like kind of shaking his head, if a recruiter looks at you, they don't care whether you have 50 or 5,000. They're going to see, hey, do you have the regular skills, this and that? And then they're going to talk to you, right? They're not going to hire you off the endorsements from people they don't know. Now, recommendations will probably help, that if you have 5 or 6 recommendations and they can see that they know some of the recommendations, right? Or you have previous managers and all that stuff, that I would help. But yeah, again, the algorithm is going to weight it in certain sense in the search results, but a person is not an algorithm, right? They're a person. So they're going to look at your profile. They're going to look at your info. They're going to look at the other things.
Yep, I'm not. Yep, ditto. I as a recruiter, I don't even look at those at all. And even if I did, it's just to see if I can like recruit or source the person that wrote your referral or
Yeah.
your recommendation. So yeah, it has no weight in the hiring process.
Okay, so moving a little bit along, and we're focusing a lot on LinkedIn is because a lot of the attendees had questions around this. So if you have questions on how to network or job search outside of that, please put it in the chat because we'd love to entertain those. But just in staying with the theme of LinkedIn, if um, actually, how can candidates use specific areas of their LinkedIn profile to attract recruiters and the types of jobs that they're wanting to be considered for? So a lot of times people will hear that recruiters will use SQL searches to look for certain keywords, to look for profiles. How does that play into it? And, and what should they do basically to make their profile more attractive?
Yeah. So I can't speak to the queries that recruiters use because I'm not a recruiter, but you can use it there. So think of LinkedIn as a living, breathing resume, right? Because anything that you can, because a resume, people only you're when someone looks at a resume, they're looking at other resumes in the pile, right? So typically they're not spending that much time on it. Sometimes on a LinkedIn profile, they're kind of checking you out. So they're spending a little more than the 7 to 30 seconds that they may spend on the resume. So use that. I've seen people use it to put their featured section, right? There's a featured section on LinkedIn and you can put like a project you work on. You can put LinkedIn is it's a professional platform, but it's also a social media platform. So you can put your achievements that you did. You can put organizations you volunteer for. So put those things in, the activities like, hey, I volunteered at this, or I attended a hackathon, or I attended a boot camp, or I attended a webinar where I learned XYZ, and use that to kind of, you know, just put more about your profile. You'd be surprised. I know someone who got hired actually not even on LinkedIn because of what live streaming stuff. So he would live stream on Twitch, and the hiring manager like watched his channel, was like, "Hey, you're a video editor," and he fit his thing. So you'd be surprised at who's watching you. And the thing about LinkedIn is a lot of people who are watching, they're silent watchers, but when they're ready to call you, you're like top of mind. So they'll kind of do that. But yeah, I'll let Corey kind of go into the actual, the queries and stuff.
Yeah. So there's actually kind of two things that I want to hit on. The first is like branding, which is I think what he's talking about, and how you can use LinkedIn to basically build your professional brand as being and be seen as like a thought leader in the space. So and then I'll talk about like the search queries and like what we do as recruiters to actually find people. So from a branding perspective, that Twitch example is actually very, very powerful because like let's just say you don't want to start a Twitch, or you're not comfortable on camera, or all these other things. Instead, I would say create and post like meaningful original content that is like thought leading or industry leading within your specific space, industry, genre, client group, whatever, right? Maybe you figured out like a great way to like optimize SEO for your company, and then you can turn that into some type of white paper or talk about it on your blog or whatever, right? Start to build collateral. It's very similar to like running your own individual coaching business. Like with my LinkedIn and my company's YouTube page and things like that. For example, like when I'm prospecting with some clients, like I'll be like, hey, watch this YouTube video that I made. Let me know if you want to work together. And then they'll get on the phone with me and I'm like, hey, do you want me to give you like a background about myself? And they're like, no, you make YouTube videos. Like I'll hire you. You must be good. Right? Like they don't even know if I'm a good career coach or not. And they're just like, oh, he has a YouTube channel. He must be good. So a lot of it really does come down to branding, and you can do that either video, written. There's like lots of different ways to like build your brand on LinkedIn. And then the second piece of like how do recruiters like me actually find people, like what do we search for? Job title is probably the most important thing, and that's where people tend to misstep. Don't just use the job title that your company gave you. Understand what the market is like for your actual job. The weirdest ones, for example, are like software engineers, right? Or data analysts. There's a lot of companies that use analyst as like a job title to make it sexier so people will apply or accept their jobs. But if you really understand what you're doing, maybe you're really not an analyst at all. Maybe you're more sales or sales operations or sales support or customer support, but they call you merchandising analyst or something like that. So I would say understand what your job title, true job title is in the market. And you can use or write multiple job titles on LinkedIn as opposed to like your resume, right? Like, for example, as a recruiter, you could be a recruiter, you can be a sourcer, you can be a university recruiter, you can be a full cycle recruiter, you can be all these different types of things. And on your resume, like you wouldn't list all those different options, but on your LinkedIn, you could. And so now if I'm searching for a recruiter or a sourcer or a full cycle recruiter or a staffing specialist or a staffing manager, then you would show up. So that I think is probably the most important thing is your job titles. And then when you're filling out your profile, give me enough where I can get a sense of like your scope of work and what you're doing. Um, Very similar to what we talked about earlier, like giving me a sense of how big the school is that you work with, or how many customers you have, or how big are your accounts. And then for roles that are like client facing or customer facing or industry specific, right? Like if you do sales, tell me what type of sales. Do you do B2B, B2C? Do you SMB? Do you do enterprise sales? Do you focus on cloud sales? Do you focus on, hardware, medical device, et cetera, et cetera? Like just give me a sense of like, okay, are you a fit for what I'm specifically searching for?
Yeah. Also, to add on to Corey's thing, the resume. So if you're applying for a job, right, and it can be known as multiple things, have different versions of your resume where on one it says sales operations, on one it says sales, I don't know, engineer, whatever makes sense as long as it's relevant and accurate. Just do that, because at the end of the day, it just helps you, right? When they match up the terms, and it's not like you're lying. It's just different. Some call it merchandising analyst, some call it data operations, some call it data whatever. So make sure you put the right ones that make sense. And look, maybe it doesn't tie in directly, but maybe they're looking for operations and you do sales operation. Get the word, so at least you're more likely and increasing your chances of getting called back.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Did everybody get all that? There were so many good sort of insights there of just, and going back to the original thought was from the attendees is just, how should we update our LinkedIn profile to attract the recruiters? And there's kind of many ways to go about it, which I think a lot of times people will take the literal sense of what they do, which is, well, this is what I was currently doing. I was a project manager and this is what I did on the job. Whereas LinkedIn is sort of an opportunity for you to really list out your accomplishments. And like you said, you're a project manager, but maybe you wanted to go to program managing or product manager. So you need to sort of tailor your profile and your resume accordingly. That's not to say you should lie or, just completely embellish, but it is the opportunity to kind of check all the boxes and make sure, like, if this is what you're pursuing, you have done the work. And so now it's a good time to sort of toot your horn and say, I am a good fit because of X, Y, and Z. So both of you brought up a topic that I'm really excited about, which is a lot of folks want to be more active, and content creation is such a big way to sort of build your presence and your brand online. So part of that is, I know LinkedIn allows you to author certain pieces, and then you can also have the option of just posting directly to the platform. But maybe some people aren't good at, I guess, articulating their passions or what they do. What are resources you recommend for job seekers or folks looking to write more or post what they do on LinkedIn? Or maybe you could share, both of you, how you stay active or you post or author right now, where you draw inspiration, etc., how to get started. Any of that would be helpful.
So one book I would recommend for writing is Anne Handley. I forgot how to spell her name, but she wrote a book called Everybody Writes, and the chapters are short. They're like 1 to 5 pages, and it's just different writing tips. Just realize that for content creation online, yes, perfect, thank you. For content creation online, just realize that you don't necessarily have to do what everybody else does. Find a style that works for you, and kind of stick to it. And just realize that read books on like copy. I would say just read books on copywriting and communication, and emotional intelligence, because a lot of copy deals with that, right? It deals with emotional intelligence. It deals with that aspect. And I get inspiration just from other people, how other people write, how other people kind of do, because I'm sort of a speaker who writes. If you look at my content, it's how someone speaks, right? So I kind of have like a story. But just realize that your content doesn't have to be perfect, and your content will get better over time. So just kind of publish and kind of get better, and get feedback and just do a little. But also realize that comments are a form of content, right? It's a different form of content, and it's an easier form of content. So just realize that. So I would just focus on, think of trying to help one person. Like, how can I add value to this one person? What kind of value? Like, I know Lisa, she does it based on books she read. Like, hey, here's a book I read. Here are like 3 key takeaways. Because what does that show? That shows that you're reading, which is a good trait. It shows that you're kind of, and you'd be surprised at who connects with you, and that's a relationship, and that relationship, who knows where it goes, but focus on that. And like, I see a lot of people sharing things on webinars they attended, courses they've taken, all that. You'd be surprised at who just reads up your content and the conversations that it can spark.
Yeah, and then I would just add on to that by saying figure out what medium you like that you're most comfortable with. I'm not the best writer. I was never very good at English in school. I could read as many books as I want about how to be a good writer. It's not fun for me. But getting in front of a camera or talking or like doing events or webinars, that is fun for me. So that's why all of my content for my business is in video format. If I was a better writer, I'd probably do more blog stuff, more blog posts and things like that. So I would say just figure out what medium you prefer, but between those two, and then double down on it. And then in terms of how to get started, I would say start with comments, and then from there maybe level up, like read an article and then post it and just be like, hey, I read this super interesting article, I learned this. And then like that's like a nice little way to get started. And then after that, you can start to do longer form content. I do think though, like if you really want to leverage the power of LinkedIn and build that personal brand, which was kind of like the crux of what I think everyone is getting at, to be seen as a thought leader, you need to create your own original content. So like if I just see someone is like reposting like Wall Street Journal articles and is like, this is what I learned, this is what I learned, this is what I learned. It's a great way to get started. You'll probably get some traction. But am I going to be like, oh, this is like the market leader in search engine optimization or data analytics for cloud companies? Probably not, because they just copy and paste other articles. But if I see that they've written like white papers, or they're posting their research, or they got featured on the trending page for some market analysis that they did, that is going to make me highly value you as a candidate, regardless of whatever your experience says. And that's really true on the engineering side, or any technical role, really. Like that's what a lot of the technical recruiting teams will do. They'll look for folks who are quote unquote experts in the field, and they do that by looking at the content that you create, awards that you receive, or like your reputation in the market.
Yeah, and also in the tech field, showcase your passion projects. I know like people sometimes they build scripts, they build little bots, they build little things, and they kind of share like, hey, I built this thing for people who, I don't know, want to filter their LinkedIn inbox or want to detect whatever. You'd be
Yep.
surprised that, and it just, again, you'll attract people and it just sets you apart.
Yeah. And you just need one thing for people to like catch on and be like, wow, that's amazing. Like I'm going to share that with somebody. And then before you know it, you're trending. And then now you have all these other opportunities. So I would just say like try everything.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. A lot of great points that Janai brought up of just, the book, first of all, Anne Hanley, she's sort of the #1 writer nowadays. So everybody kind of uses her style and kind of her recommendations. And secondly, naturally to a lot of people. And so if you are one of those people where like you're just, pen and paper, you get writer's block or you're not into it, but you are passionate about something, or you're good with video, camera, etc., or you're not, I highly recommend maybe working with a freelance blog writer, ghostwriter, something like that, and talking to them and saying, hey, I am passionate about making robots or whatever, right? Cooking or whatnot. And then they can kind of help put pen to paper as to what it is and help formulate some of those thoughts. And then like, obviously you set up some kind of arrangement, and then you can indirectly sort of use that content they create as your original thought. So I've seen a couple people do it that way. And then just kind of borrowing a page from Janayad's book of just when you do a podcast and you have someone look through it, they can also generate long form blogs from the podcast sessions as well. So there's many different ways to generate content. Sometimes it involves you first handwriting, and other times it may involve you working with other professionals in the space.
Yeah. And also to add to that, you don't need a lot of people to view your content.
Mhm.
You just need the right person to view your content. I remember one time one of my business partners, he doesn't get a lot of views, but he got it like when we were hosting a career panel, a person from NBC saw it, right? And they ended up being on the career panel. So you don't need a lot of views, and you'll see that sometimes the posts that get the most views don't necessarily lead to things, but the posts that are a little more targeted and direct and speak to a certain group of people, that leads to things. So just realize that you don't need 5,000, 50,000 views. Sometimes the right 500 is all you need.
Right. Yeah. Just 500. So yeah, hopefully we can all get there. So we've been talking a lot about LinkedIn. I just want to shift gears a little bit on, besides LinkedIn, what are some other digital mediums that job seekers can explore for networking, etc. Just like you said, just to meet others outside of that social media aspect. Corey, go ahead.
Aside from LinkedIn, I would leverage like Facebook groups. Albert's List is a huge example of that. Meetups also, I know that those aren't super popular right now with COVID, but meetups are also like a really good networking tool. And then just follow your passions and what you're interested in. One of my clients that I'm working with right now, she may even be listening. She's really into parasailing. And so that's what she loves, and you'd be surprised like who the connections you meet if you just ask them what they do whenever you're like packing up or like getting ready to go out and like play tennis or play soccer or whatever. Like you'd be really surprised that, especially here in the Bay Area, you know, like you could be playing soccer with like the CEO of some company and never even know it. So I would just say also just follow what you're interested in, because it makes it a lot easier to form genuine connections as opposed to like faking it. And so yeah, and then just don't be afraid to put yourself out there too. I got 3 job offers driving for Lyft. I'm not saying everybody needs to become a Lyft or Uber driver, but I think if you're strategic in terms of like where you place yourself and put yourself in opportunities or events where you can meet powerful people, that would also be really great for your career.
Yeah, to add on to that, like the hobbies, you want to live your life so that you enjoy it. And when you meet other people, it allows them to see you in a different context, and it allows them to actually see your communication skills in like a non-work setting. Whereas sometimes these interactions, it's hard to kind of, should I talk about this? Should I not talk about that? You can kind of be in a more natural setting. And when you're in a more natural setting, you're more of yourself, right? So people, it's a better, you just showcase yourself better. So like anybody who talks to me about like MMA or fighting or martial arts, it's like I'll go talk to them about different things, right? So kind of do those things, and you just never know where it actually leads to. It just leads to a lot of places. So just realize that networking, you can do it on any medium. It's all about being proactive, taking an initiative, right? Regardless of, like meetups was a great way. If you're in the Bay Area, right? Bay Area, New York City is like, it's expensive because if you utilize it, right, the networking is second to none, right? That you could literally meet crazy amounts of, like, I've met CEOs of like companies that, millions of dollars, that are very popular, that, compete with Amazon. And it's literally just like, I went to a thing and then 10 people showed up, and one happened to be like the co-founder of DigitalOcean, right? And then my sister got an internship at him. So it's like these type of things. It's just go out and go to forums, right? It's different ways like that you could kind of do it, right? And again, as you meet people, because the thing about networking is, as you network, you meet people who network, and people who network tend to know more people, and they know other people who network. So it's like, as that first push, you do it, you'll see that it sort of leverage, you can easily branch out.
Yeah, and then another book that I read once, I'm not going to say I read it multiple times, but is how to make friends and influence people, or
Yeah.
win friends and influence people.
Yeah.
And in that book, they talk about this idea of a super connector.
Yeah.
And so that's what I also mean when I'm talking about like quality versus quantity. when you're networking or like trying to like figure out who you should keep in touch with, because everybody's excuse is networking is exhausting. I don't have time to keep track or keep in touch with 60 people. You don't have to. You just need to figure out who your like 2 or 3 super connectors are in your group. And those are the people that you need to maintain, nourish, and build your relationships with over time. So for me, if you think about just who makes hiring decisions in your industry, so I'm a recruiter. So usually either the director of staffing will be the one hiring me, or his boss or her boss is ultimately the chief HR officer. So if I'm thinking about people that I really want to add to my network in case I get laid off or I want to, go to a different company, I'm going to become buddy buddies with like directors of staffing, head of staffing, chief HR officer, director of HR, VP of HR. Those are the people that I'm going to be proactively building relationships with ahead of time because they're going to be powerful decision makers in a hiring process later on when I actually want a job. So I'm not keeping in touch with like 60 people. I'm keeping in touch with like 5, but they're all
Yeah.
super connectors or very well, respected or high-powered executives in that particular field. So you can just go to that one person when you need something and be like, hey, I think I want to work here. Do you know anyone? Oh yeah, don't worry about it. Like talk to this person.
Yeah, no, I mean that's true because like I am that super connector person, so my friends come to me
Yep.
and then they'll be like, "Oh, you know what? I'll get you a referral at this place. I'll get you." And also just realize that just because someone's a super connector, you actually have to have a relationship with them where they trust you because super connectors tend to get reached out to a lot. I'm not going to just refer to someone who only contacts me when when they need a job, right? Because people know that it's like, "Oh, this person are they asking me for money or are they asking me for a job?" So you kind of, just stay in contact. Again, be a genuine person who builds relationships and you'll see it reap rewards.
Um, that's really great. Just, I want to go back to a question that
Yeah.
I'm getting from the board that was from an earlier conversation. I just want to make sure that that person doesn't feel like we dropped it. Is going back to applying for jobs, is it better to apply directly on through the company website, or is it okay to also just apply through LinkedIn Easy Apply, Hire Club, Indeed, etc.? What are your thoughts there? Let's start with
Yeah.
Corey.
I don't think it matters whether you're on their direct website or not. It'll all get funneled to the same place. The ATS systems may be configured differently, but like I don't know enough about the backend software to know like which ones are better. But I don't think it ultimately matters. I would say not use the LinkedIn Easy Apply though. I think you should use your actual resume when you are applying.
Got it.
Yeah. And also to the easy apply, again, each strategy has a pro and con. Just realize that certain strategies, like an easy apply, you can apply to more, but you have a lower chance, right? But you can do the job application on the websites. They take more time, but you can apply to fewer. So just realize that each strategy has a pro and con. Because I know someone who swears by easy apply. He said straight up easy apply all day, and it worked. But again, they're losing out on other opportunities because they're doing the easy apply way. So just realize that there's no one strategy that work. That there are different strategies that work, and each strategy has a pro and con, right? Like if you only network and you never apply, you could spend 10 to 20 minutes a day applying and get these jobs and get these interviews. So just, be mindful of what your goals are.
And I just want to call something out too, because I feel like this is really pervasive in our space.
Yeah.
Is be wary of like generalized advice and tips that you get from like friends and family members about job seeking and like
Yeah.
getting jobs, right? Like I hear this all the time, like, oh yeah, I just use Easy Apply. It works for me. You should just use Easy Apply. You don't even need to like write a resume and fill out that stuff. Like unless this is like a recruiter telling you this or like a certified career coach or something like that, like I would take every career advice that you get from anyone that you trust with a grain of salt, especially when it comes to like major career decisions like, hey, I hate my job, what should I do instead? Oh, Corey, you're a people person, you should do sales, you're going to love
Yeah.
sales, like
Yeah.
like you love talking to people. Oh, you should work in sales. Maybe. Or you should probably like do some research first before you quit your job and just start applying for all these sales roles. Same thing with like here in the Bay Area, like being a software engineer. I hear it all the time. Oh, with COVID, software engineers never got laid off. Oh, they're the only function that they got to keep their roles. Oh, and all you got to do is do a boot camp, and then you can work at Google. My friend
Yeah.
did it. Yeah, he just did one boot camp, and then Google gave him a job. He makes like $175,000 a year. He didn't even go to college. And then there are clients that I have that are like, oh my God, I'm going to quit. I'm going to do a boot camp and I'm going to go work at Google. I'm going to make
Yeah.
$200,000. I'm like, well, first of all, are you going to enjoy that job? Second of all, like not everybody literally gets to work at Google. Like there's a reason why these boot camps are relatively affordable. Like not everybody gets to work at these amazing companies and make that kind of money. Not every software engineer got to keep their job during COVID, right? So I would be very, very wary of general advice you get.
Yeah, no, very. That's very important because just realize again pros and cons to every advice, every situation, every person, depending on their skill set. Like a lot of advice, again, you're gonna see a lot of people online that a lot of their advice is like they sell hope. They don't give advice. They just sell you hope. Like, yeah, just do this and hope. Yeah, things are gonna be okay. And you don't want to be the jerk. Like, look at reality. The fact is, you're probably not gonna work at this company unless you do X, Y, Z. And he can, as you being a recruiter at Google, that you probably get, in a job application, the people you hire, they're probably people you reject who are just as qualified. It's a tough decision, right? It's not like, hey, you only get one person. This person's like the best person ever. It's just like, hey, we have to make a decision, and with this limited information, you have to kind of pick and choose, and sometimes small things, right? So, and just realize that, especially on LinkedIn, I've seen people got fired, next day they're a career coach, and they really don't know anything. Like, I got my career coaching certification, and there are a lot of subtleties, and you have to be able to filter good advice, because a lot of people, they give advice to people who are like themselves. And yes, if you're a people person, yes, maybe you should be in sales, right? But there's so much more, right? There's a specific type. Are you enterprise sales, long-term sales? Are you the cold calling, right? Because yeah, you can be in sales, but if you're a people person, you don't want to be cold calling 300 people a day, right? You lose the people aspect.
Yeah.
And there's some other things too. So just realize that, be wary of advice that you get, and pick and choose what advice works for you, because the advice that works for Elisa, that works for Corey, may not be applicable to me, just like the advice that works for me may not be applicable to you. So just pick and choose. I think filtering advice is a very good skill as a job seeker.
Yeah, again, a lot of great insights from Corey and Junaid. And I just want to add, I know that, so in our Facebook group, we have been getting a lot of posts recently about just people that have been applying to a lot of jobs, but maybe not getting a lot of success. And sometimes, like, I'm trying to frame it in the right way. There will be a lot of posts on LinkedIn or Facebook saying, I was broke and now I'm on a private jet, I'm doing this, or like, oh, everybody can do this. So there's a lot of these, like, I don't even know there's probably a good way to describe it, of just,
there's a formula for it. Like,
yeah, exactly. There's a
say
formula.
You're broke, but you got to say you only had 132 in your pocket, and be specific. 132, and you lost a quarter, so you had 107 left. Like, they all have a certain formula. You're gonna see it, that they have a certain archetype, they have a certain story. Again, throw that out. Look for the actual advice in there, because look, I can tell you, my friend was broke, and now he's schizophrenic, and the rest of his life will suck because he can't get healthcare. Like, that's a real story. It's not, if I post it on LinkedIn, it's not gonna get a lot of likes, but that's reality. Like, I know people who have lost their job, they were laid off for years, and it's not everyone ends up at a job at Google, right? 99% of people get rejected, and that's the reality, and you just have to accept that.
Yeah, that's my main point. Just don't fall into that. I mean, I think this, again, everybody that's on here today, you did the right thing. You're part of the session. You're getting a lot of insights, and I do encourage everyone to stay connected after this. I know, Junaid and Corey, they both own their own sort of career resource businesses, and so they can kind of support you in that journey. And I do believe it's kind of like a long-term process. The only good analogy I'm thinking of is kind of weight management, where a lot of people want to lose 30 pounds like the next day, right? They want to eat a fat loss supplement, they want it right away, and a lot of people want that to be the same thing for seeking a job. I'm the right candidate. Why isn't anyone calling me back? Whereas in the real life, in reality, it's more of a long-term process. And so we are here to support you on that. But just know that just getting to that right opportunity is going to take time, and you have to put in the work, right?
Yeah.
You have to be applying for those jobs and be proactively seeking people out, and specific with their asks, and spending time to understand who to reach out to, not just kind of adding random people on LinkedIn and hoping someone gets back to you. That's not going to yield the results that you're wanting, right?
Yeah. Also, to add to one thing, I think someone asked, they said, please don't take it wrong, but I feel when you're talking about networking with the extra effort with those powerful people someday and is opportunistic, again, don't think of network because you want to network with someone. I connect with people because of their interests. When I connected with people, I didn't connect with them because I knew they would work at Twitter one day. I connected with them because I like them as a person. I like their background. I like them all. Like I'm still in contact with a lot of my middle school friends. I had no idea that they were just good people that we connected with, and that's it. And again, focus on adding value, that just because you network with someone and they get you a job, stay in touch with them. Like, I'm still in contact with the people who gave me a referral, and it was because I helped a classmate with, we used to be study buddies. So if you think of, you can be a genuine networker. Don't think of, people can smell through people who solely network. Like, Corey can tell you, he can network with people who are solely networking with him because he works at Google, right? He knows that when people just want a resume versus people who are there actually for advice and a genuine conversation. It's part of networking is asking people for advice. That's a very valid thing. I like giving advice to people because I was that college kid who got advice, and that helped me too.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Quick scenario for you both, and I just want to call out Aiko. Hopefully she's okay with me putting that there. So in the chat, she says, I want to work at Headspace. I have 30 connections there, but I want to build relationships where I ask for a referral. So do you guys have any recommendations for her? I just want to walk through like a job scenario. Maybe other people in the group are facing a similar situation where they want to work at a company and they do have connections, but they don't maybe want to use their existing connections or as leverage to get the job there. Aiko, if you're on there, feel free to unmute and clarify so that the two speakers can help you achieve what you want, which is ultimately to work at Headspace.
I mean, I would just ask them, like, hey, does me being a Headspace champion put me up on the applicant list? As a joke, kind of use that. I mean, you start a conversation, right? And you just never know where it goes. Ask for advice. Ask for, hey, like, what do you look for in a candidate? How can I increase my chances of getting into Headspace? Ask those questions, because then they'll kind of give you answers, and then they may think like, oh, you know what, you're actually a good candidate. Or they may be like, oh, you're not, oh, you need to work on these skills, and then come apply. Then actually go work on those skills and contact them back. Be like, hey, thank you for the advice you've given me. I took XYZ course in 2 months. I actually did this, and thank you so much. It was really helpful. Like, most people just don't follow up. Like, there's so many people who I've given advice to, only like a fraction of them ever follow up. And guess who are the people who I end up spending more time with? And look, I help people for free. I just don't tell them that if you keep on doing stuff, I'll kind of help you, because I understand not everyone's in that position. But just be proactive. And also, I want to give some numbers stats. If you're kind of having trouble in the job space, just realize that for most people, even who are qualified, they're only getting like a 3 to 10% response rate. Because just realize that even if companies are posting, budgets get frozen. It's a very uncertain time. Like, this is probably even worse than financial crisis. It's a pretty bad time for job seekers, right? Like, future's uncertain, budgets got frozen, a lot of areas are just like, they're uncertain. Even these big temp companies, there are certain departments that they're laying off, other departments are safe. You just don't know. Like, I know a friend who works at AT&T, and they're like, hey, they're thinking of relocating and all that stuff. So there's a lot of uncertainty. I just realize that a lot of times when you apply online, the jobs are already filled. They have someone in mind. They're posting for legal reasons, or right? So just realize that.
Awesome.
I would love to say something.
Yeah,
First of all, I want to say thank you all for this time. And yeah, I was actually chosen to be a Headspace champion in March, right before the pandemic. And one of the strategists came up to me and said, please send me your resume. Yeah. But I felt a little uncomfortable because I just didn't want to take advantage of that space. Like, they say, oh, give us your resume. And then there was an opportunity where I could apply for a role. I did, but I just wasn't feeling right about it. And they ended up choosing someone else.
No, I mean, why would you feel wrong? They literally, like, they're giving you, this is like a layup, like an alley-oop. They're passing it to you and giving it, like, you're not bribing them. It's not like I don't know, it's your father's company and you feel like you're leaping people over. You were the champion, so you did whatever you could. I don't know. I feel like that's like so like you earned it, right? It's not like I don't know, you're I don't know. I don't know. Corey can expand on it, but they literally gave it to you. And so look, I'm going to tell you because I struggled with receiving things, right? A lot of people struggle with receiving things, but in general, in order to receive things, you need to sort of put yourself in the mindset. Like, how do you say your name? Aiko. How do you pronounce your name? Aiko.
I
So
go.
Aiko. So are you okay with gifting people things or helping other people in their job search?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
if you're okay with gifting and giving, you should also be okay with receiving because because if you're of the mindset that you can't accept, kind of, it's actually, you're sort of looking down on people, right? Who accept because it's something that, it's above, you're above that, but, just kind of change that. And that's what really helped me give, right? Because if you were in that position and you were helping, you'd want to help someone be like, hey, give me your resume. So if you would do that in the other position, it's okay to receive, right? So kind of put yourself in that position and you'll see that it's a lot easier and you'll be a lot more comfortable in accepting things.
Yeah, I think at that point the timing was a little off for me.
Yeah.
Um, I was actually I'm working at Starbucks currently, and I fell in love with it, and I'm the headspace champion for Starbucks.
Yeah.
I felt like I needed to be there for a little bit longer before moving on to the next thing, and so that was my resistance, and I just ended up meeting the person that they ended up
Yeah.
hiring. We have become very close,
Yeah.
but yeah, in terms of receiving, I feel like I don't know if I deserve this. That's how I
I mean,
feel.
look,
I have a little bit of an imposter syndrome,
yeah.
I believe. So
No, it's a
um,
common issue.
something to work on.
Let them make. If you didn't deserve it, they would have rejected you, right? There are plenty of people who don't
Oh
think
no,
they don't think they're good for the opportunity, and they get the job. So what are you gonna say? Like, if I can't accept this job offer, I don't deserve it. Just go take it. Let them.
well,
So don't eliminate yourself.
yeah, it's a pretty competitive company to work for. Everybody wants to work there, right?
Yeah, and
So,
look, just
but,
realize that reach out to that person again, thank them, be like, hey, a couple months ago in March, you asked me to send your resume. The timing wasn't right for me, but is that offer still on the table? If it's not, I still want to thank you. But Headspace is a company that I really want to, start off the conversation. You just never know where it goes.
great.
And they have a positive view of you, so right. And
Yeah,
Corey,
I'm really grateful for that. Yeah,
yeah,
I even know the CEO now.
yeah.
It's a little strange, but still, it doesn't matter. If you know the CEO, it really doesn't matter.
I don't know. I would say it matters, right?
You know,
You're
it's
ahead
just
of someone who doesn't
really
know the
grateful for
CEO.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
You're ahead of someone who doesn't know the CEO, so that's a big advantage in any situation, right?
Yeah, I
But
guess I'm a little headspace nerd, so
yeah,
I talk a lot on LinkedIn.
It's good.
But
I
I
It's
like
good
really
that.
to
appreciate
nerd out
the
on the
question.
company you want to work for. It's not a
Yeah.
bad
Yeah.
thing.
Like, I mean, look, you're the ideal candidate because most companies don't have that many. Look, most companies want people who are passionate, but the reality is there are only a core group of people who are actually very passionate. Most people, they like the job, they're good at it, but very few. So you are like the ideal person that they would want to hire, right? You
Yeah.
are the headspace nerd. Like some people are like the Google SEO nerd. Some people are the Google ad nerd, and they'd love to hire them, right? Because most people who work in Google ads are not
Yeah.
right? They may be passionate, but they're not your level of passionate. So use that to your advantage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have a lot
I
to work on, so
Yeah.
but thank you so much.
Yeah.
you're doing great, Aiko. And I
Right.
think the original question was if you have connections at a place, how do
Mm.
you leverage them to get a referral? Um,
Yeah, I've never asked for a referral.
I mean, like if you're already connections with them, and assuming
I
like
mean,
you've done
I need,
networking
yeah.
correctly, it should be relatively easy for you to ask. Gary Vaynerchuk has a book called Jab Jab Right Hook.
Oh,
So in theory, like if you did two things that were nice for somebody else, you should now feel like you've earned the ability to ask for something in return. So assuming you have that level of relationship with some of those folks that you're connected with at those companies, then I would leverage that. It's now your time to ask. Conversely, let's say you don't have that level of relationship yet. I would instead reverse engineer your relationship. Maybe you go on their LinkedIn, you see who they're connected with that you are very, very close with, that can talk about your work in a positive light, right? Very similar to what I talked about before. Maybe you see Joe knows my old manager, Sean, So then you reach out to Sean. You say, Sean, hey, what's going on? Like, I really miss working with you. Let's catch up, blah, blah, blah. And then at some point you slip in like, hey, Sean, I'm thinking about exploring other opportunities. One of the companies I'm really interested in is Headspace. Do you know anybody there? And then he'll probably say, oh, yeah, I know John. And then you're like, oh, fantastic. Like, would you mind introducing me to Sean at Headspace? I already wrote the introduction email. I'll send it to you. Just copy, paste it, and CC me. Right? You can even do it that way. So there's lots of different ways for you to kind of leverage those existing relationships that you have, either if you've nurtured them already or begin to nurture them in some other format.
Yeah. Also, there's a famous quote: "Closed mouths don't get fed." So you got to ask. I mean, like, it's a very simple thing. You'd be surprised at what you can get by asking. I know one kid, he got an internship at McLaren at 15. He just cold called the company
Clarence sounds great.
and he cold called the company until he got to the CEO, and he was like, I'd love to work for your company. And again, once he got that one opportunity, he got, I think the next company he got into DJI or Tesla. It was DJI and Tesla. But again, it's just like he asked. And I think, again, you're in a position where it's okay to ask, right? They're actual connections. They're not just random people who are spamming every head place employee. Like, can I get a referral? You actually know them. So, again, either ask for a referral or ask for advice on how you can be a good candidate for the company. You'd be surprised at how much info you can give, because this is how you find out about jobs that don't even exist. Because a lot of jobs, people learn about them before they're ever posted. Like, I've hired people, I've never posted online, but people who talk to me know about those jobs. Like, sometimes they have to wait for some approval process so they can tell you, hey, we're actually hiring after the next budget report finalizes. That's next week. So can you follow up with me next week? So get those conversations. You have those. And either way, sometimes the process takes some time, but start it early so you're ahead of the curve.
Yeah. I just want to highlight what, again, both great points from both of you, but what Corey said about make it easy for people to help you and say yes to you. So like, you're asking for someone to do a warm intro, be like, hey, is it possible for you to connect me with this person? Oh, by the way, here's something you could send to them about who I am and what I'm trying to do. And they're like, oh yeah, like I already know Aiko and I can vet for her. I know she's genuine and talented. And so I'm just going to copy and paste this thing. Like, most people want to do the right thing, but it's more just the effort of like, okay, what am I supposed to say? Like, I don't really understand. So this is now they're just moving forward, copy and paste. Don't feel bad about it. Just do it. Make your intentions known. And then, the worst thing that could happen is they, don't move forward. Right. Just want to kind of circle back. We have sort of a comment in the chat. I want to make sure we answer it before we close out the event. It's by Ash Warden. I'm sorry, I'm butchering your name. Feel free to unmute if you'd like to clarify, but I'm just going to go ahead and read it, which is that recruiters sometimes don't respond after the first email they initiate, which is something I think that has happened to Ash Warden. And so the question is there a way to motivate the recruiter to come back to that established conversation without bothering them with many emails? Let's start with Corey.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I think if that's happening, hopefully not often, but if it does happen, it's one of two reasons. A, I got really busy, or B, I filled the role, or I found someone that's slightly more qualified, and for whatever reason. And so there's probably a reason as to why I did not re-engage with you after an initial conversation. Also, sometimes recruiters don't always send you emails or let you know that you've been rejected. So I've heard that or seen that in Albert's list sometimes too, is like you'll apply online, they'll email you, they'll say, oh, you're a fantastic fit, let's talk on the phone. You talk on the phone and then you get ghosted. That could also just mean that unfortunately it wasn't a good match. You can always follow up. I would say give it like 3 to 5 business days and then follow up and just say, hey, just wanted to check in, see if you had any questions or if I'm still in the running for this role. And then you'll probably quickly get an answer. And if they don't respond, then I think you also have an answer. I would just say leave it at that, but give it 3 to 5 business days. I don't like it when my candidates email me like every day asking for an update, because that also shows me some red flags that you don't take social cues well, emotional intelligence. I would give it 3 to 5 business days.
Yeah, same thing. You know, Corey's a recruiter, so he can definitely speak more to that. But again, just realize that people are busy. Like, I still haven't checked. Like, there's so many emails that I have to get to, and it's like, especially now more than ever, a lot of people are, as people are getting laid off, the people who do have their jobs are just getting more work. So as opposed to, you know, now there were 20 recruiters in the department, now it's down to 15. So everybody has 33% more work. So just realize that. And again, I've had people who are like following up like every day. It's like, relax, like, you know, so kind of just follow up. This is the thing about feedback is like sometimes people are wary about giving feedback because while most people take it well, there's that one person that doesn't take it well, and then they blow up on you and they're like, all right, I don't want to deal with this again. So just realize that a lot of times, even when you ask for feedback, you won't get an honest answer just due to legal reasons, just due to that they don't want to get in trouble or they don't want to hear an outburst. So just kind of, when you want to follow up, wait for the 3 to 5 business days, then kind of wait and kind of say, hey, XYZ, this is where we last left off. Do you have any updates? If they don't answer, what I would recommend is still, you'd be surprised that maybe that role got filled, but keep on engaging with their content. Maybe try to engage with the, you know, recruiter, maybe a month from now, support their content. You just never know. Cause I've seen people where you were the second level candidate and now the next time something opens up, you know, the recruiter has you top of mind, right?
Those are great points. Like you said, you know, nothing wrong with coming in second place the first time. Like if you're not the top, you know, candidate in mind and you don't get that offer, stay engaged with all your connections, especially the people that you know you had a really positive outcome with, because those are the people that are going to internally champion you for future roles. You never know when the next opportunity is going to come. So again, sorry, we're running a little bit over, but so many great insights from this session. I just want to extend thanks and appreciation to Corey and Junaid for your time tonight and kind of sharing all the best practices in job hunting more efficiently and almost working smarter in a sense, instead of applying into kind of the black box. Again, if you'd like to stay connected with them both regularly, I know they're both really active and they own their own businesses in the career resource space. So if you have questions on resume write-up, how to update your LinkedIn profile, how to, if you're going through a job recruiting process and you need support on negotiations, compensation discussions, I know that's a niche of Corey's. Junaid has, you know, he does a lot in resume rewrites, etc., career coaching as well. And so please feel free to network with them both directly. And thanks to Albert's List for sponsoring the event. And we'll be in touch with a follow-up email as well as our future event series. And so please connect with Albert and myself if you're looking for support. We have accountability groups, programs that we're running. And so if you're in that job search and you need extra support, we'll get you connected with immediate resources.